So how do I measure that I'm starting to trust other people? How do I measure that my needs are going to get met, that I can just kind of relax? I can be one with the community. I don't have to constantly having this scarce mindset of like, what about me? What about my needs? What about my future? And I think one of the best ways to measure this is what you measure matters. What you measure improves. You've probably heard these sayings in business, but they apply to recovery. If you're not measuring your recovery, if you don't have milestones, benchmarks, things you're focusing on, how do you know you're in good recovery? How do you know you're recovering? This is even more important for married men, right? If you've betrayed your wife sexually, she's going to want to know, are you recovering? How do you know? How do we measure this, right? What are these milestones that we're looking for? And I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone with guys who want to join my program and they're, 2 or 3 years into recovery, they've relapsed. And so they're looking for a more intense form of recovery. My program's extremely intense, right? They'll call me. And so I'll ask them, right? Okay, this guy's been in recovery for 2 or 3 years. So I'll ask him to kind of explain to me, hey, what is your specific process addiction, your specific sex addiction? What does that entail? And then what were the pathologies or the false beliefs, the identity issues, integrity issues? What were these specific things? Not just integrity, not just lying. I mean, that's far too vague, right? What are these specific things that caused you to do what you did? And then how do you know those things are going away? What are you doing to actually take those faulty behavior patterns or thought patterns, thought processes, these pathologies? What are you doing to get them out of your life? That's recovery, and that should be measured. Now, again, I know I'm making this sound a little black and white, and it's not quite that linear, right? How do we measure the distrust, our distrust of others? It's a common one amongst sex addicts. They don't trust other people. They get their own needs met themselves. They've been doing this their whole lives. So how do we measure the fact that you're now trusting other people? You're trusting the community to meet your needs. That's tough to measure, right? I think we have to come up with a custom milestone plan with both your recovery group and your therapist so you can know where you're inching along in that progress, right? And I think one of the best ways to measure this is a recovery group. A group that you're attending consistently. One of the unique things about my groups is you're with these 9 other guys for the whole time you're in recovery. So you guys are getting extremely close. A lot of them have attended 2 or 3 intensives out here in Arizona at my house together. So, these guys have gotten extremely close. And here's the advantage to that. These guys know what your pathology is. And so as you enter the group, obviously, your process addiction, your problematic processes, it's very obvious there. You're telling the group about this. But then as months go on, the group can help you see progress that you've made or help you see when you are kind of regressing, maybe trending back towards some of your old habits that you're trying to break. So when we're talking about this measuring recovery, let's zoom out a little bit. So what do I mean by this? Well, first off, if you've listened to my podcast, you've probably heard me bring up before, you really should have a Word document or something saved somewhere where you are cataloging the things that you didn't learn in life, the areas of life that you're maybe lacking. And then certainly, the more blatant ones. I always say you should have 2 very obvious problematic thinking patterns, pathologies, whatever you want to call them. You should have your top 2 front and center at any given time, and you should be absolutely working on those. So I'll give you a couple examples. So what I mean by that, and again, when I give examples, I usually talk about myself just because it's easier that way. My top 2 pathologies are I'm performative. I believe that a successful existence is how many people are impressed by you, how many women are attracted to you and wish that they could be your wife, right? So my life became very performative. How great can I be? How many things can I win? How many areas can I be number one? How impressive and superior can I be, right? So that was my biggest pathology. A lot of high achieving men struggle with that one, especially in the US. We have this hustle culture where men are trying to pursue greatness, excellence, superiority, whatever. So that was number 1. Number 2 for me was a distrust. I do not trust people to meet my needs in the way that I want them met. That was just really from my childhood. I get my own needs met. And the problem with that is I prioritize my needs too, often over other people's. Because my needs are so important, I'll lie if it helps meet my needs, even if it hurts another person. Those were my top two. But you should have a list of 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know what we're going to call them, personality flaws, pathologies, problematic thought processes, whatever. You should have these cataloged and you should be working on them. So that was what really zoomed out. So let's zoom in, right? Using those two examples that I just gave you when I was in recovery, we need to measure those things. Let's use the distrust of others to meet my needs. So how do I measure that I'm starting to trust other people? How do I measure that my needs are going to get met, that I can just kind of relax? I can be one with the community. I don't have to constantly having this scarce mindset of like, what about me? What about my needs? What about my future? What about my life? What about my career, my success, my fulfillment, my happiness? How do I just kind of like chill out a little bit and just exist in the world with a bunch of other people and trust that everything's going to be okay, that I'm going to be cared for, that life's going to be all right, that I don't have to micromanage and over engineer and future plan, and live in the future. How do I live in the present and stop fabricating all these plans that are basically pulling out of my life and making me run programs rather than live here now? Because it is. It's hard to live in integrity if you are constantly living in the future and constantly, unsatisfied with where you are and trying to improve and get to a better place. So how do we measure this? Like I said, it's tough. You're going to have to use your recovery group here for milestones. Maybe your wife, for the married guys listening to this, you can help you with those milestones if she wants to. Your therapist for sure. So your therapist or your CSAT should absolutely be able to help you look at what should we be monitoring to track this progress. I'll give you a couple examples of things that I looked for. So in that area of distrust, again, number one was how present am I and how much am I regretting and resenting things of the past and how much am I dreaming and planning of the future? Am I just here today, right now, just enjoying this moment, doing whatever needs to be done right now? And so I'm measuring my presence. Well, how did I know that? I did, one of the guys I was working with at the time, he had me meditating every 2 hours, which was very annoying. But nonetheless, it was kind of cool I would go to a room, turn off the lights, lay down, and just do this quick little 10-minute meditation. And what I found was there were some times where I would do the meditation and it was great. I was grounded, got right into, the stillness. There were other times where I would come in and lay down and oh my gosh, those 10 minutes felt like an hour. I was annoyed that I was meditating. My thoughts, where my head was bouncing all over the place. Next thing you know, I've spent the last 5 minutes not meditating, but actually just thinking about tasks that I need to do. So that helped me understand, okay, wow, I'm very not present right now. And so as I was kind of going on, through recovery, one of those measurement strategies was, okay, when I'm doing these little meditation practices every 2 hours, how often am I grounded in those? And how often am I bouncing all over the place, manic, hating the meditation and wanting to just get back to work or whatever it is that I'm doing? That would be one measure of just me being able to be here now and trust that everything's going to be okay. Another one would be how I was kind of gauging my own self-importance, throughout the day. How often am I thinking about other people? How often am I thinking about what the other people in my life, what they're going through and how I interact with that? So my self-importance was always very, very exaggerated because again, I didn't trust anybody to meet my needs, right? So I thought about my life, my future. It was all about me, 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 me. Now, that's not to say that I'm not a kind, giving, generous person. I am, but if you looked at my brain, probably 90% of the day was focused on my future, advancing my life, my career, my hobbies, etc. What I wanted to measure is where's my self-importance? Am I okay with being equal to everybody else? Just being another human, just as important as everybody. And so one of the ways that I would gauge this would be when I was in public. When I'm in public, do I find myself comparing myself to others? Do I find myself, sizing people up, labeling other people, categorizing other people? Because again, that's kind of sucking me back into this over-engineered existence that I had, where I'm constantly kind of scanning and preparing, finding people I can impress, finding people that I need to be better than, right? So when I'm in public, how present am I, or am I scanning? Am I scanning, planning, scheming off, again, not being present and calculating different ways to meet my needs, different people to impress, rather than being present, I'm constantly measuring how good I'm doing in life. Am I the most attractive guy in this room? Oh, wow, he's better dressed than me. He's more muscular than me, whatever it is. So that was another one of my gauges was in public, do I find myself just existing, just being there, enjoying the time, enjoying everything around me, right? Or am I thinking? Is my head spinning? So again, we could talk about this forever. That's not the point. I was just trying to give you guys some context as you're trying to measure where you are. Because again, I think this is important. It's important for two reasons. One, if you're not this tapped into your recovery, How do you know you're recovering? How do you know you're in good recovery? So, really doing the best you can to kind of measure, if I got this problematic thinking or this pathology, if I got this out of my life, what would life be like? And then when I'm down here, okay, what are the steps that I can see in between where I am today and where I want to go? Right? How would I gauge and measure any sort of progress? And again, for the married guys, this is going to be critical with your partner. She is going to want to know, how safe am I? How recovered are you? Right? Am I an idiot to stay with you? Or are you going to just do all of this again? Because remember, addiction, compulsive sexual behavior, cheating, infidelity, lying, whatever you want to call it, all of this stuff happens because we let it happen. And what I mean by that is you have beliefs about yourself, the world. You have an outlook, thought process that allows you to lie, that allows you to cheat, that allows you to, hey, my wife's not here, I'm going to go do this, right? The only reason these things happen is because you have beliefs that allow them to happen. So that's why it's critical for both, well, I mean, married men, yes, and with your wife, the plan, but also just single men trying to get a good recovery. You need to map this stuff out. You need to measure it. Otherwise, I think that's why we see such a high rate of relapse in this sex addiction field is men are checking off the boxes, but I don't think they're getting nearly as introspective as they need to secure a really solid, stable recovery plan.